In 1900, you have a huge craze. You know, it's called the automobile age from 1899 to before World War I. Everyone wants a car, and everyone is thinking about getting into the automobile business. You've got 2,000 plus automobile companies formed during this time. Probably a vast majority of those make one or two cars, prototypes that don't sell. You get a few more who just don't have the engineering background. They think, you know, they got to find an engine and slap four wheels on a wagon, and then they've got a car company.
Howard built a car for himself in 1902 or something like that, and he was a brilliant engineer, so there was a good background. Second, Nordyke and Marmon was one of the preeminent engineering houses in the world.
And then you get into the people who know what they're doing and have good ideas. And there's where the Marmons come in.
A phenomenal ability to build the machinery, primarily milling machinery, and therefore they had all these engineers and lathes and mills and capability.
You know, they don't just build a car. They do experiment, you know, for the first few years of the business, making different configurations, different engines and so on, but they've got a focus in mind, and it's to make a superior car.
And Howard built a car, and his friends liked it and asked him if he would build them one, and it kind of got going from there.
That era of the automobile age, that's the .com of 100 years ago. But they're certainly very successful in getting into the market, making their niche, and switching the family business over from a 19th century business of milling into a very much 20th century business of automobile manufacture. There are 5 eras of manufacture of Marmon automobiles. The earliest period is based around the Wasp, and its win here was a tremendous publicity coup for the Marmon Company. It led to 2 things. One was the great popularity of the Model 32, which was manufactured about that time, and also the development of the Model 48, which was based on the Wasp engine itself.
They went to the Speedway offices downtown and said, is there any way we could hold our entries back until we're the 31st and 32nd, because what we're selling to the public is the Marmon passenger car Model 32. They didn't have a name, it was just Model 32. And so 32 appears on the side of the car, and it was a great publicity tool because it won the race. The Marmon 32 won the race, and you could buy a Marmon 32.
That's the old saying, what wins on Sunday sells on Monday.
Sales were just, you know, skyrocketed after the race was over because of their victory, got so much publicity, and everybody thought, hey, we better get a Marmon.
Back then, Marmon was a very important company. They were leaders in engineering in many respects.
Nordyke and Marmon was at the corner of Kentucky and Morris.
Howard Marmon's great innovation at that period was the development of the internal lubrication system for an engine, with all the channels that feed oil into cylinder walls and bearings, and it's the modern system. It's still in use today. Howard was just a phenomenally brilliant move and patentable, which he did with the internal lubrication system in the engine.
He was an innovator, and as I understand it, a lot of his stuff that he invented is still used today, and that's got to be something.
They decided to enter a local race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They brought to the Speedway a car that was a little different from all the others. Normally you had a driver and a riding mechanic. Well, they wanted to have, because of weight and that type of thing, a car with just the driver with no riding mechanic. So how do you find out who's coming up behind you? Well, the innovation is, of course, the rear view mirror.
How well did it work? Well, I knew Ray Haroon. I used to go and see him, and he said, with the track being bricks, it was so rough and there was so much vibration, I couldn't see anything in it anyway, but I was the only person that knew that.
To think that Ray Haroon sat in that thing for 6 3/4 hours and averaged 74 miles an hour for 500 miles, he had to be really tough.
I was amazed at how much strength and muscle that it took to drive those cars. I then thought back what it must have been like to try and drive it on bricks. and not just to do it for 1 or 2 laps, but to do it for 500 miles.
Just before the outbreak of World War I, Howard Marmon developed the straight 6 engine, all aluminum head and block, and put that in what they called the Model 34. That was the Corvette of the early 20s. If you wanted to run whiskey from the Canadian border and not have a police car that could catch you, you bought a Marmon Speedster.
It's a wonderful history. It's a family history.
I remember driving up in the Marmon cars. I sat asleep on the back seat with all that space and jump seats behind the front seats, but the floor filled with flowers for great-grandmother. And the house was perfectly wonderful.
The company had gone through evolutions. In the 20s, the image of quality began to expand a bit into medium-priced cars. Change in management and trying to drive more production to make the business more successful. And indeed, and I don't know, it was maybe 1926, they reached peak production of almost 30,000 automobiles in a year. So it's a big outfit, building a lot of cars. Then when the Depression comes, like many auto companies, didn't have the diversification and the scale to survive a huge reduction in demand.
Many other car manufacturers had the same fate. It's too bad that we lost so many wonderful car manufacturers as a result of that. I wish they were still around.
I think it's the impact a vehicle has on history in the period, from a styling perspective, from an engineering perspective, from a performance perspective. And if you hit those 3 things, no matter whether you're Studebaker or Volkswagen or Chevrolet, you occupy a place in history that's hard to duplicate. And Marmon got those 3 things, but not all at the same time. So it was a very good company, but I guess not big enough to survive that depression.
The Marmon Company went away in 1933, but the Marmon name certainly didn't. The Marmon engineering firm continued afterwards and continues today as a multi-billion-dollar engineering and development company.